Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., and over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. Before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. The U.S. is reportedly planning to withdraw from the United Nations Culture and Education Agency, UNESCO, as President Donald Trump continues to pull Washington out of international institutions he no longer considers useful to the United States. Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri says India and the Maldives are negotiating a free trade agreement, an investment treaty, and areas of cooperation, including renewable energy. Russia's online media site Baza, known for covering criminal news, says police have raided its office and the home of its editor-in-chief as investigators launch a probe into media leaks from law enforcement. The UK government gives final approval to the Sizewell C nuclear power plant in eastern England after reaching a funding deal with investors. The $51 billion project aims to support net zero and energy security goals. And heavy flooding inundates the Philippines' capital city of Manila, forcing tens of thousands of people to flee and schools and government offices to close at a time when another storm is brewing just off the coast. We begin in Washington, where, in a dramatic escalation of tensions between the White House and one of America's most prominent newspapers, President Donald Trump has barred the Wall Street Journal from traveling aboard Air Force One on an upcoming trip to Scotland. The move comes just days after the newspaper published a report alleging the president once sent a controversial birthday message to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, a claim the president flatly denies.
I look forward to getting Rupert Murdoch to testify in my lawsuit against him and his pile of garbage newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. That will be an interesting experience. If there was a smoking gun on Epstein, why didn't the Dems, who controlled the files for 4 years and had Garland and Comey in charge, use it? Because they had nothing.
White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirmed the decision yesterday, accusing the Journal of fake and defamatory conduct. On last Friday, the president filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Journal and its owner, media mogul Rupert Murdoch. A bold legal move indeed, believed to be the first of its kind by a sitting U.S. president, and one that further highlights President Donald Trump's increasingly aggressive stance toward critical media outlets, including those that have historically supported him. Now, this isn't the first time the Trump administration has in fact retaliated against a news organization. Earlier this year, the White House stripped the Associated Press of access to multiple events after the outlet refused to adopt the president's preferred terminology, Gulf of America, for the Gulf of Mexico. The dispute has now moved into the courts. And while the Wall Street Journal has not commented on the travel ban just yet, the White House Correspondents Association condemned the decision, calling it deeply troubling.
This attempt by the White House to punish a media outlet whose coverage it does not like is deeply troubling, and it defies the First Amendment. Government retaliation against news outlets based on the content of their reporting should concern all who value free speech and an independent media.
Jeffrey Epstein's case has long haunted President Trump. In a 2019 law enforcement memo ruled Epstein's death a suicide, concluding there was no credible evidence he had compiled a client list or blackmailed powerful figures. But that hasn't stopped conspiracy theories, particularly among President Trump's MAGA base, from flourishing. Many of them believe the Epstein saga hides a web of elite criminality and want President Trump, now back in office, to expose it.
Obviously, this is not a complete hoax given the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is currently serving 20 years in prison in Florida for her crimes and activities with Jeffrey Epstein, who we know is a convicted sexual predator. This is why I said, and I'll reiterate it again, the best thing that the president can do is appoint a special counsel to handle the Epstein files investigation.
As President Trump prepares to meet British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Scotland, questions swirl over whether the president is trying to protect himself, control the narrative, or both. And with Rupert Murdoch, a longtime Trump ally, now squarely in the firing line, this fight may just be getting started. And now shifting to a shocking aviation incident that unfolded last week. A commercial passenger jet averted a mid-air collision with a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber over North Dakota this past Friday, prompting an investigation by federal authorities. The near miss happened on July 18th as SkyWest Flight 3788, operating as a Delta Airline connection flight, was preparing to land in Minot, North Dakota. The aircraft had departed from Minneapolis and was on final approach when the pilot performed an aggressive maneuver to avoid what was described as an incoming aircraft on a converging course. Now, according to a video taken by a passenger on board the aircraft, the pilot told passengers that air traffic control did not inform them about the military plane, which turned out to be a B-52 military plane. The pilot further apologized to passengers for the abrupt movement. Here's what he said.
For those of you on the right-hand side, you probably saw the airplane kind of sort of coming at us. Nobody told us about it, and so sorry about the aggressive maneuver. It caught me by surprise. This is not normal at all. I don't know why they didn't give us a heads up, because the Air Force Base does have radar, and nobody said, hey, there's also a B-52 in the pattern. Long story short, it was not fun, but I do apologize for it.
The pilot attributed the incident to a lack of radar coverage at the Minot Tower, where air traffic controllers rely primarily on visual observation. The Federal Aviation Administration confirmed on Monday that it's investigating the incident, which saw the pilot execute a go-around instead of landing. The FAA also clarified that air traffic services at Minot are provided by a private company, not FAA employees. Now, to give some context, Minot, located about 80 kilometers from the Canadian border, is home to both a commercial airport as well as a U.S. Air Force base. The Air Force base is reportedly home to 26 B-52 bombers, intercontinental ballistic missile operations, and more than 5,400 military personnel. In a statement, the U.S. Air Force confirmed that a B-52 from Minot Air Force Base was conducting a flyover of the North Dakota State Fair on the same day and said an internal review is now underway. The statement also noted that the B-52 was not alerted to the inbound commercial jet.
The B-52 crew contacted Minot International Airport Tower, and the tower provided instructions to continue 2 miles westbound after the flyover. The tower did not advise of the inbound commercial aircraft.
Meanwhile, SkyWest Airlines said it's conducting its own investigation and confirmed the flight landed safely. But U.S. Congresswoman Betty McCollum from Minnesota has raised concerns about safety gaps.
The incident in Minot raises serious questions about passenger safety. Given the Department of Defense training that takes place in the surrounding area, Minot International Airport must also immediately receive and install radar technology to have a full accounting of all local air traffic.
Now, this near-miss incident comes less than 6 months after a U.S. Army helicopter collided with an American Airlines jet approaching Washington's Reagan National Airport, killing all 67 people aboard both aircraft. This disaster prompted the federal authorities, including Congress, to review coordination between military and civilian aircraft flying in the same airspace. In early May, the FAA reportedly barred Army helicopter flights around the Pentagon after another near miss. And so as federal and military investigations continue, the incident in North Dakota is adding to growing concerns about airspace safety, particularly in areas where both civilian and military flights routinely intersect. And moving to the Middle East, ballistic missiles launched from Yemen early today set off warning sirens across central Israel, sending thousands into shelters before being intercepted by Israeli Defense Forces. According to IDF officials, the attacks came from a Houthi-controlled territory and was aimed at Israel's Ben Gurion airport. And while no injuries or damage was reported, a Houthi spokesperson labeled the attack part of a special military operation, which was in retaliation for recent Israeli bombardment of Yemen's Hodeidah port. Now, amid rising tensions, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a strong warning, saying Yemen's fate will be the same as Tehran's, adding that Israel will act at any time and in any place to defend itself, and vowed that the Houthis would pay a heavy price for attacking the Israeli state.
The fate of Yemen will be the same as Tehran. The Houthis will pay a heavy price for launching missiles at the state of Israel. We will continue to act at any time and in any place to defend the state of Israel.
Yesterday, Israel launched a fresh round of airstrikes on the Hodeidah port, targeting what it claims are military installations used to coordinate attacks on Israel and its allies. Now, according to the IDF, the targets included fuel containers, engineering naval vessels, and facilities believed to be involved in the transfer of weapons from Iran to the Houthis. The Israeli military said the operation aimed to prevent the Houthis from restoring previously damaged terror infrastructure at the port. In fact, this marks the 13th time Israel has struck Houthi positions in Yemen since the Gaza war began back in October of 2023.
The IDF has identified the continuous efforts and actions of the Houthi terrorist regime to re-establish terrorist infrastructure at the port, and as such, the components used to advance these efforts were struck. The Houthi terrorist regime exploits the maritime zone for the use of force and to carry out terrorist attacks against passing vessels and global maritime trade.
A spokesperson for the Houthis said Tuesday's missile launch was part of a campaign to pressure Israel into ending its war in Gaza and lifting the siege. He added that options would continue until those demands are met. And now, since resuming its offensive against Hamas in March of this year, Israel says it's faced over 60 ballistic missile launches and at least 15 drone attacks from Yemen. In fact, the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden have also become flashpoints. The Houthis have targeted shipping lanes they believe are linked to Israel, significantly reducing traffic through vital routes. In fact, earlier this month, the group attacked a Greek-owned cargo ship, killing 4 sailors. Although they agreed in May to stop targeting American vessels under a U.S. brokered deal, they made clear that Israeli-linked ships remain fair game.
The Yemeni armed forces affirm they will continue to prevent Israeli navigation in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. They renew their warning to all companies dealing with the ports of occupied Palestine that their ships and crews will be targeted in any area within the reach of the armed forces, regardless of the ship's destination.
As Israeli strikes on Yemen intensify and rhetoric escalates, questions remain unanswered. Is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu opening another front in Yemen after Gaza and Lebanon? And just how far is he willing to go? Now to a dramatic escalation in Latin America's diplomatic fault lines. Venezuela has opened a criminal probe into one of the region's most controversial leaders, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele. At the center of the firestorm, a group of Venezuelan migrants deported under U.S. immigration sweep. Now back home, they're claiming they were tortured and held without trial inside one of the world's most feared detention centers. As Caracas demands accountability and El Salvador pushes back, the standoff between these two countries seems to only be intensifying. Here's what's unfolding beyond the headlines.
Diplomatic ties between two Latin American nations are hitting a new low. Venezuela has launched a criminal investigation into El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele. Caracas accuses Bukele of human rights violations against dozens of Venezuelan migrants. They were detained for months in a high-security prison in El Salvador after being deported by Donald Trump's administration. Venezuela's Attorney General says those migrants, now back in their home country, reported being subjected to torture and mistreatment while in Salvadoran custody. And the prison in question is Iskcon, the massive terrorism confinement center built for gang leaders.
Hemos decidido abrir una investigación formal.
We have decided to open a formal investigation with the 3 designated national prosecutors into the following officials in El Salvador: Nayib Armando Bukele, a despot who violates the Salvadoran constitution and calls himself president of El Salvador; Hector Gustavo Villatoro, Minister of Justice and Public Security of El Salvador; and Osiris Luna Meza, Director General of Penal Centers and Deputy Minister of Justice, and public security of that country.
Osiris Luna Mesa.
The Attorney General says his office acted after migrants provided first-hand accounts to Venezuelan officials. But why were these migrants in prison to begin with? According to Venezuelan authorities, over 250 of its nationals were detained in El Salvador in March. They were part of a wider U.S. deportation push, but instead of being repatriated directly, they ended up behind bars at Iskcon, without trial, and under conditions rights groups have long described as inhumane. The prisoners were only released last week as part of a three-country arrangement. El Salvador released the detainees in exchange for 10 U.S. nationals who had been jailed in Venezuela. The deal, brokered behind closed doors, involved intense diplomatic backchannels between the U.S., El Salvador, and Venezuela. And now, Caracas is demanding accountability. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro welcomed the migrants in a televised broadcast, slamming El Salvador's prison conditions and comparing them to Nazi-style concentration camps.
The first plane has just landed with the 252 Venezuelans rescued and freed from Nayib Bukele's concentration and torture camps in El Salvador. There come our Venezuelan boys who were kidnapped, disappeared, tortured, and after 125 days we rescued them.
Libertad! Libertad! Libertad!
Late on Monday, President Bukele posted about the agreement on social media, but did not comment on Venezuela's abuse allegations.
The Maduro regime was satisfied with the exchange agreement, that's why they accepted it. Now they shout and get indignant, but not because they disagree with the deal, but because they just realized they ran out of hostages from the world's most powerful country.
But the return of the Venezuelan migrants has thrown fresh spotlight on El Salvador's prison system and the conditions inside one of the world's most feared detention centers. Rights groups allegedly say the Iskcon facility operates with less transparency, and reports of abuse, torture, and inhumane conditions are widespread. El Salvador's government has touted Iskcon as a tool to crush gang violence, and President Bukele has hailed it as a model for security. But with accusations from Venezuela of rights abuses and a criminal probe now targeting Bukele himself, the future of diplomatic ties between the two nations looks increasingly uncertain. Could this diplomatic row escalate into a full-blown regional standoff, or will cooler heads prevail?
And finally, in the United Kingdom, a video has left many stunned, hurt, and questioning the depths of disrespect some are willing to show in the name of a prank, or even worse. A viral clip from London has sparked outrage after a man was seen eating fried chicken inside Iskon's Govinda restaurant, a sacred, strictly vegetarian space for devotees of Krishna consciousness. What unfolded next has triggered not just anger, but a wave of emotional reactions from people who say the act is more than just a violation of house rules. It's being seen as an assault on spiritual sanctity. Here's the full report.
In what many are calling a deeply disrespectful and painful act, a viral video has surfaced showing a man eating chicken inside Govinda's in London. It's a strictly vegetarian restaurant run by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, commonly known as Iskcon. The man has been identified by social media users as a TikToker who goes by the name Senzo. He's known to make prank videos. The video, which has been widely circulated online, shows the influencer believed to be of African-British descent entering the restaurant and asking if it is a vegan restaurant. When a staff member politely informs him that the restaurant does not serve meat, onions or garlic, the man then opens a bucket of KFC and starts eating it inside the premises. The man then offers pieces of chicken to other diners and staff. A horrified staff member can be seen saying no to the prankster. One concerned customer even confronted him, reminding him that his actions are a violation of the restaurant's values and environment. Despite the plea, the man continues with his act, forcing the staff to call security. The influencer is eventually escorted out of the restaurant. Iskcon London issued a statement later to condemn the incident. The letter stated that this is happening due to lack of spiritual content in the education system. Youngsters nowadays are deriving happiness from other people's misery, and insensitive incidents like these are posted on social media for viewers to enjoy. What has hurt many the most is not just the act itself, but the setting in which it occurred. For the followers of Iskcon and practitioners of Krishna consciousness, Govinda's isn't just a restaurant, it's an extension of the temple, a place of purity and peace where food is seen as a spiritual offering. To bring meat, let alone consume it inside, is more than just offensive. The video has left the global Hindu and Iskcon communities deeply shaken. Many are questioning whether the act was a thoughtless prank, a calculated attempt to offend religious sentiments. In a world already grappling with rising intolerance, this incident serves as a painful reminder of how easy it is to wound and how vital it is to treat all beliefs, no matter how different, with dignity and care.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.